1, go!
You ever get obsessed with something out of the blue? I have. Many, many times. This time, it's a snowmobile racing game from 1999 made by EA Canada. I grew up playing this game as a kid and I recently got back into it. And after playing it like mad for the past week, I had a thought. Normally, in the Open Mountain Championship, you get the choice to upgrade after every race. What if we just didn't do that? Each racer has 5 stats: top speed, acceleration, handling, stability, and tricks. Top speed affects the speeds you can reach, obviously. Acceleration, how fast you can reach that speed, which especially matters after crashes. Handling affects turning and how sharp you can take corners. Stability is how easily you fall off the sled, whether it's hitting a wall while turning too sharply over a snowbank, or landing after doing a trick while still in the animation. I might be wrong about that last part, so please let me know in the comments if you know better about this stuff than I do. I'm not sure what tricks affect exactly. I want to say it affects how easily you fall off your sled while tricking, but I could be wrong. Each course has many hidden shortcuts in and around it that you wouldn't notice upon a first playthrough. The CPU like to follow the main path like 8 times out of 10, so using these shortcuts consistently is going to be key to winning each race. Going over the rules real quick, you have to get first place in each race to progress the championship. Since I'm playing on an emulator, I'll be using save states to make a save before each race so I can just quickly restart. Normally you get 3 retries per race, but I didn't want to have to go through the entire championship again just to make it back to one race in particular. Also, I think this is really neat. You can turn off rubber banding. I think a lot more racing games need that option. Alright, let's get into the run. First track is Pine Valley. Not much of note to say about this course. It's a fairly straightforward loop around the woods with a cabin at the end, which I think is very cozy. Right after the first big turn, there's a path to the right that leads to a jump, letting you skip a lot of the main path. There's also one shortcut through a cave at the end that leads to the upper left of the wood cabin. It's not as big a time save as the first one, but every second counts. Given the difficulty of the course and the CPU so far, I take an easy win and it's on to the next course. Next up is Kodiak Canyon. It's not too hard either. There's a jump near the beginning that lets you skip over the first few turns. If you do take the bottom route, then you can go up a path to the left that skips slightly over the next turn, but I avoided it as you drop down after and I wasn't about to risk crashing when the race had barely begun. Rounding the first big turn, there's a straight section with a lot of hills and a jump all the way at the end that lets you cut the corner by a sizable amount. After landing the jump, there's a path to the right that leads to a jump over the main path. That brings you to a drop-off where you're met with a small ramp just before the finish line, letting you skip the last few turns. I had a small hiccup on the last lap, but managed to secure a win anyways, which means it's on to race 3. Hardpack. This track takes place deeper into some woods with some sections of the course having icy covered ponds. The race starts off on a small hill that you follow down to a larger jump. A bit before though, there's a split with the left path being a shortcut that's kind of awkward to turn into unless you brake or hit the big ramp at the right angle. It probably would have been worth using, but I just never made a habit of it. After a couple large jumps, you come to a ramp with a cautious sign that lets you jump over a log. This takes you down a small hill with a few turns where you end up driving across a small patch of water, and after that I join up on the main path for the rest of the race, until right at the end where I take this path to the left that leads up a hill and over a bridge, skipping the last few turns and putting me a decent amount ahead to the others. Tricking can be a bit complicated sometimes, and so I accidentally did a bigger one than I intended at the end here, which led me to crashing. I was able to take the lead back though, which means we're able to go to race 4. Alright, Eagle Ridge is definitely one of my favorite tracks in the game. The race begins with a small jump followed by a bend that then leads to a large winding path. I take this jump to the left, and since you're able to drive straight across here, ignoring the need to turn entirely, I'm able to gain an early lead. At the end of this section, you can take a path to the left that leads to a jump over the bridge, but I chose to go back on the main path because of this section where you can break some wood boards and drive down this mine shaft. After going over some bridges leading over icy water, we're met with a few sharp turns, and this one section I like to try and drive over the rocks to cut the corner as best as I can. It saves a lot of time because if you do it wrong, you have to brake and turn before going, otherwise you'll fall off. This is a better example of that. Then you do the same with the next corner, and then the rest of the race is fairly straightforward after that. I'm able to win again, and then we're able to go the next race. So after completing the first 4 races, you unlock what's called the Foggies. It's just the first 4 races you did again, except as it suggests, it's foggy now. There's not really too much to say about the courses. The CPU haven't really sped up either, so I just do the races as usual, and I'm able to move on to the next 2 brand new courses. Glacial Grind. This one starts off simple. After the first few turns, we're eventually greeted by what I assume is an iced over river with an oil rig. I saw a time trial where someone followed a straight path over the ice. With my sled, it was slowing me down, so I probably could have stuck to the main path and did better. Apparently, it didn't matter anyway since the CPU decided to all fall off their sleds while tricking, which let me gain a bit of a lead. The track continues with a few more turns before you go uphill into a cave. To the right is a bunch of icy spikes you can break through to cut a portion of the track. Once you leave the cave, you're met with a downhill section, and if you go all the way down to the left and stick to it, you jump across, go uphill, and follow this cave till you make this jump across to the ship, riding along the top before performing another small jump that cuts out the last corner of the race. I had a small scare at the end of the last lap, but thankfully I had enough of a lead to safely take first place. Alright, next up is Goat's Bluff. This track. This track is probably one of, if not the hardest courses of the run. There's almost nothing to the track that lets you gain any kind of lead, no shortcuts, no big corner cuts. There's probably only like 2. There's just one corner at the beginning of the race that could be taken quite a bit sharper if you stick to the left. However, I insisted on sticking to the right ramp that lets you jump over it, which ended up being slower overall. I just hadn't figured out the course well enough at that point to realize it. The rest of the track is nothing special. There's a shortcut at the end where the red sign is, and if you just keep going straight, it leads to this cliffside. There's actually just a snow-covered top of a bunch of train cars. The finish line is just ahead after a small drop, and somehow I was able to do it first try. So the next part of the championship is just the last 6 tracks we did, except this time it's night now. I'm also feeling the speed difference of the CPU much more now. Pine Valley was easy, and Kodiak Canyon had a few random hiccups that didn't occur before, but it's probably just me playing the course worse than I did before. I actually lost my first attempt at this race right at the end. On my second go, there was a super close call at the end of the final lap, but I was just able to block the dude behind me and take first. Hard pack was more of the same. I followed my usual route and took first place first try. Eagle Ridge was also the same story, except I lost my first attempt again. One more try was all it took to take first place though. Glacial Grind also didn't give me too much trouble. I choked a bit at the end, but brought it back just so, which means we can go to my also favorite Goat's Bluff. Hooray! This track is a nightmare with 0 upgrades. I already mentioned it before, but there's little in the way of shortcuts, which means most of my time was spent behind everyone else. It took me to my 3rd attempt, and I only ended up winning because the CPU kept crashing enough for me to gain a sizable enough lead to get first place. After that, we can finally enter the finishing, which means we get to see the last 2 races of the championship. First of which being Perilous Pass. This track is interesting. Right at the beginning, you're presented with this decision to go either left or right, so of course I wanted the shortcut, so I go left. Only to fall down. So it turns out the game kind of depends on you having some speed upgrades to be able to clear out some of the gaps in these later stages, and I just didn't have the speed required to make it safely across. I guess it's the main path for me. There's another small route to the left after that cuts some of the corner, but it seemed very iffy on whether I would make it or not. I continue along the rest of the track before attempting this next jump, which surprisingly I was able to clear. Thank goodness. Nailing this jump consistently will be key to winning this race, so as long as I don't choke anywhere else, I should be alright.
No footer!
I guess I spoke too soon.
Somehow I was able to win first try, so I was able to proceed on to the final race of the championship, Lost Peak. Not too much to note on this track. There's 3 sections of the track where you need more speed to be able to make it across shortcut jumps. So I was forced to stick to the main path for most of the race. That didn't stop me from trying for some reason though. This next section brings you up to a plane that's crashed into the side of the mountain. If you take this ramp to the left, you can jump onto the tail wing and make it across that way, cutting that turn entirely. However, I didn't have the speed to make it, so it was kind of a futile attempt. Right after, there's also this branching path to the left, but I just barely made it across, so I wasn't sure if it was worth taking from then on. This section at the end has a lot of jumps that could easily take you over the edge if you're not careful. Normally you need to stop accelerating and take it slow around the bends, but I just didn't go fast enough for that to be a real problem most of the time anyways. I did fall off sometimes, but it was mostly a skill show on my part. I didn't win my first attempt, but on my second attempt I smartened up with the shortcut attempts, blocked when I could, and thanks to the CPU messing up at the end, I was just barely able to eke out a win. So yes, you can beat Sled Store's Open Mountain Championship without upgrading your sled whatsoever. I was really happy knowing I accomplished that. It was neat to not just blast through it with an 800cc engine and basically maxed out stats. It almost felt like a hard mode in a way. I really like this game, and it's too bad that the only other entry we got was on PS2. No other snowmobile game I've tried has hit quite the same. Maybe one day we'll see another entry. Until then, I'll just be enjoying these games. If you're even mildly interested, I highly recommend that you check it out. That's all from me for now though. You guys take care.